Let me read to you a passage from the 16th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, verses 1 to 7. It's the Gospel for the Mass of the Easter Vigil Mass of Year B. St. Mark writes, "When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint the body of Jesus. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, 'Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?' But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. 'Don't be alarmed,' he said. 'You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you.'" That's from Mark chapter 16, verses 1 to 7. And what does it suggest to us? Well, I remember reading an article by a prominent theist philosopher in Australia, and he observed that in respect to God and the supernatural, reason alone will not bring much real certainty to the inquirer. That is to say, if our only resource were to be rational reflection on the visible world, then we would be profoundly uncertain of the fact and nature of its unseen creator. That was his opinion of what in fact could be expected of his own discipline, which was philosophy. What helps us to appreciate this is to consider the notions of God as exemplified in the religions and philosophies of man in the course of history, and then to compare these notions with historical revelation. There is a tremendous gulf between the two. If our standard of truth is revelation, then man is shown by the facts to be in the poorest twilight. Characteristically, he is not in the light, and the contrast between the teaching of Christ and the teachings of the most influential teachers shows that without the light of Christ, the world is in religious darkness, allowing, of course, for the flickers and flashes and elements of religious light and truth that are continually recurring. With good reason, St. Matthew in his Gospel, chapter 4, verse 16, quotes the prophet, "The people who sat in darkness saw a great light, and to those in the region and shadow of death, a light has dawned." He was referring to the beginning of the public ministry of Christ. Well, the same can be said of the afterlife. What would we know of what happens after death were we to attempt to work it out on our own? The fact impressing itself on our mind would be the fact of the grave and the sight of the tomb. The one we had known and loved all our life, our father, mother, brother, sister, relative, close friend, whoever, has gone before from sight, and the remains of that much-loved person are in the earth. A monument rests on the spot with his name on it, or his ashes are gathered in a small container. But what has happened to the person we loved, the person who animated the body, which in turn gave to him his visible and concrete countenance? The answers to this are numerous, and they leave the inquirer at sea. What man needs is hard facts about the afterlife. We can say that the hardest and worst fact in life is the unendingly recurring fact in human history of death. As a fact of life, death is absolutely unavoidable. It brings everything to an end. The person has gone for good from this world. Because of this awful situation, many religious systems have embraced a doctrine of reincarnation, which, with the greatest of respect, is absurd. What man needs are hard concrete facts. Man needs a hard fact of life following the hard fact of death. He needs to see what has followed on death. The actual witnessing of this is what will throw a lasting and certain light on the hardest and worst fact in the life of all mankind. Well, mankind has this fact, which tells him what happens after death. And the fact I am alluding to is the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. The fact was that he died, and the fact was that he rose from the dead. He was seen to have died and was buried just as we are. But unlike us, he rose from the dead and was seen by many. As the angel said in our gospel today, "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He's not here. See the place where they laid him." As risen, he lives a transformed life of glory. It hasn't happened to anyone else with one exception. The single exception was his own mother, who at the end of her mortal life was taken body and soul into heaven in glory. Her assumption I am referring to. But her case is the great illustration of what we can hope for, provided we live and die in Christ. From him comes life, and the key to sharing in his life is to believe in him and to follow in faith in his footsteps. What other facts can be relied on? Apart from that fact, all there is are myths, religious proposals, and rational speculations. The message brought by the Church to the world is a fact of history, which has profound implications for everyone who accepts it. Where Christ has gone, we can hope to follow. If we die in him, we shall rise with him. Christ has shed a tremendous light on the great mystery of death. Death now need not be viewed as an entirely negative mystery. In Christ, it has become a source of fruitful life. The point, though, is that man has a hard fact to go by. Divine revelation involves the hard facts of history. Let us resolve so to contemplate the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead as to appreciate the truth and the reality of it. It's no mere myth. It's not just a speculative and rational system, a beautiful creed that keeps our lives motivated by a tremendous sense of meaning. Christianity is not just the most profound religion in the world. It is a religion of hard facts. Facts that can be absolutely relied on for the light we need on God and on the afterlife. Because of those facts, we can confidently devote our lives to the pursuit of holiness and to attain heaven hereafter.